Marcus Johnson sat alone on a worn wooden bench under a flickering street lamp. The rain fell in steady sheets, making thin rivers on the asphalt and soaking the edges of his coat. He pulled his jacket tighter around his shoulders and watched the drops dance on the puddles. A cold wind brushed over him, but he hardly noticed the chill. He was lost in his own thoughts, thinking about the quiet emptiness that had filled his life since his wife passed away. The park had once been their special place. Now it felt too big and too silent for just one person. As thunder rumbled in the distance, Marcus scanned the dark paths winding through the trees. He wondered if he should head home and leave the night behind. Then, a soft sound caught his ears, small sniffles and a faint scrape of shoes on wet concrete. His head turned toward the edge of the park, where two tiny figures huddled beneath the branches of a willow tree. A little girl with tight curls clutched a smaller child, wrapping her thin arms around the toddler. They wore thin jackets that looked more like dresses, and their legs were bare down to bare feet. They shivered in the cold, their faces streaked with tears and mud. Alarm rose in Marcus's chest. He slid off the bench and took careful steps toward them. "Hello?" he called softly, not wanting to scare them. The little girl looked up, startled at first. Then relief washed across her face. She cupped her small hand against her forehead to keep the rain out of her eyes. The toddler blinked up at Marcus with wide, frightened eyes, her lips trembling. Marcus knelt down so he could meet them at eye level. "Hi there," he said. "Are you both all right?" The older girl's voice was a soft whisper, nearly drowned by the rain. We're cold. We're hungry." Marcus glanced around, but the playground was empty and no one else was watching. He touched the little girl's shoulder gently. "What are your names?" he asked. The older girl hesitated, then said, "I'm Mia." The toddler clung to her sister's leg and mumbled, "Zoe." Marcus nodded, his heart tightening at their small voices in the storm, stood and held out his hand. "Come here," he said. The girls flinched, but then stepped forward. He wrapped his coat around them, two small bodies fitting against his chest. The wet fabric pressed cold against his skin, but he didn't mind. He led them to his car parked nearby. The seats were leather and warm from the heater, which he turned on full blast. He tore a towel from the trunk and handed it to Mia, who used it to dry Zoe's hair. Marcus fetched 2 paper cups from his glove box and poured steaming milk into them. He added a packet of sugar to each and handed one to Mia, one to Zoe. Their hands shook as they clasped the cups, sucking greedily at the warm liquid.
Oh.
Marcus smiled gently and took a sip of his own coffee. The sweet milk warmed the girls and brought color back to their cheeks. Mia peered around the car as though she expected to see someone come to take them away. "Our mama. She went to get help," Mia said, her voice shivering. "She said she would be right back, but she never came." Marcus felt a lump in his throat. He reached across and patted Mia's hand. "I'm sorry she didn't come back," he said, "but you two are safe now." Zoe nestled against Marcus's side, eyes heavy with sleep. He watched her eyelids flutter before she drifted into slumber. Mia rubbed Zoe's back gently, humming a soft tune. Marcus reached for his phone and dialed the child services hotline, explained what he had found, giving his name and location. The voice on the other end asked many questions. What were the girls wearing? Could he describe their faces? Did he have a safe place to keep them? Marcus answered each calmly, though his mind raced. He wondered if he could let them go, knowing they might be split up or sent to some strange home. His own empty apartment suddenly felt like the right place for them. By the time the social worker arrived, the rain had eased into a light drizzle. An official in a dark raincoat stepped out of a car and approached through the puddles. She had kind eyes but spoke in a matter-of-fact tone. She introduced herself as Ms. Reed and asked Marcus if he would come to the station to give a statement. She explained that temporary foster care would be arranged. Marcus listened, but when she mentioned that the girls might be placed separately, he felt a rush of anger and worry. "I don't want them to be alone," he blurted out. "Can't I keep them together? It's for tonight at least?" Reed paused and looked at the girls. Zoe yawned and stirred in Marcus's arms. Mia blinked sleepily and leaned against her sister. The worker sighed softly. "They do deserve to stay together," she said quietly. "We can arrange that." Relief flooded through Marcus. He agreed to drive with her to the station so he could give his full account. He carefully lifted Zoe, holding her close, and helped Mia into his car. At the station, lights buzzed overhead and walls were painted a dull gray. Marcus sat at a long table with the social worker and an officer who wanted more details. He told them everything he saw: the empty stroller, the missing mother, the cold rain. He gave his address and phone number, offering to stay with the girls until paperwork was done. He signed form after form, his pen scratching across the paper in a steady rhythm. After an hour, Ms. Reed returned and smiled. "Everything is in order," she said. "Tomorrow, we will check on your home. If it meets the standards, we can have you as an emergency foster parent for both girls." Marcus nodded, felt a flutter of excitement and fear mixed together. He had never imagined taking on 2 children. But as he looked at them sleeping side by side on the bench in the waiting room, he knew he would not let them down. Late that night, Marcus drove back to his small apartment with the girls sleeping in the back seat. He remembered the empty rooms waiting for him, a spare crib at the far end of the bedroom. He unlocked the door with a quiet click and led them inside. The apartment was modest: 1 bedroom, a tiny kitchen, and a living area with worn furniture. He turned on a lamp, and its soft glow filled the room. Zoe stirred and rubbed her eyes as Mia gently carried her to the crib. Marcus found too warm. Blankets uncovered Zoe, then lifted Mia onto the couch, laying a pillow under her head. He tucked the blanket around her shoulders. Before he could move, Mia reached out and took his hand. "Thank you," she whispered. Marcus knelt beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You're safe here," he said softly. "I'll take care of you." He filled 2 bowls with cereal and milk, the only snack he had. Mia ate quietly, then Zoe woke and joined her. They giggled at the mess they spilled, and Marcus laughed along. Afterward, he bathed them in the small tub using gentle soap that smelled like lavender. They splashed water at each other, enjoying the warm bath after a cold night. Marcus wrapped them in fresh towels and dressed them in pajamas. Back in the living room, Marcus sank onto the couch, exhausted but content. He watched Mia and Zoe play quietly with a single stuffed bear he found in a drawer. He imagined how tomorrow would bring new challenges: social workers arriving to inspect his home, questions about his ability to care for children, and the fear of being turned down. But as he looked at the sisters, with their hair fluffy and clothes clean, he felt a strength he had not known before. When they finally grew tired, Marcus led them to his bedroom, tucked them into the crib and couch, then slept on the edge of the mattress. Rain began again outside, its gentle patter like a lullaby. In that moment, Marcus realized his life had changed forever. He was no longer just a man alone in an empty home. He had 2 little ones depending on him. He promised himself and them that he would do whatever it took to keep them safe and together. As he drifted to sleep, he thought of the storm outside and how fate had brought them all together. In the heart of a rainy night, a lonely man had found his purpose, and 2 abandoned girls had found a father. ChatGPT said. Marcus woke early the next morning to a soft knock on his door. He rubbed his eyes and stood, pulling on a sweatshirt as he opened it to find Ms. Reed, the social worker, and another official standing quietly in his narrow hallway. The apartment was small but neat. The living area held a worn sofa and a modest TV. The kitchen had only the basics: a small stove, a refrigerator, and a rickety table. The bedroom was barely larger than a closet, with 1 bed and a small crib. Pushed against the wall, Marcus smiled, though his heart thumped with nervousness. Ms. Reed stepped inside, her eyes kind but professional. "Good morning, Mr. Johnson," she said. "We're here for the home visit." Marcus nodded and led them through each room, explained where the children would sleep, and showed the small but sturdy crib for Zoe and the couch for Mia. He pointed out a shelf filled with clean towels and extra blankets. He even showed his locked medicine cabinet and fire extinguisher under the sink. Every detail felt important. As they inspected, Zoe stirred in her crib and peeked over the rail. When she saw Ms. Reed, she reached out her tiny hands, and Marcus lifted her. Zoe clung to his neck, yawning. Mia sat up on the couch, rubbing her eyes, and offered a shy wave. Miss Reed smiled and made notes on her clipboard. The second official tested the smoke detector and checked window locks. When they finished, Ms. Reed closed her notebook. "Everything meets the basic requirements," she said. I'll submit my report today. Should hear back by tomorrow. Afternoon, relief washed over Marcus. Thanked her and watched the two leave. After they closed the door, he sank onto the couch, holding Zoe on his lap while Mia snuggled close. I was scared, Mia whispered, looking up at him. Marcus kissed her forehead. I know. But you were so brave last night, Zoe pressed, her tiny cheek against his chest, and snorted sleepily. Marcus stood and carried them into the kitchen. He measured cereal into 3 bowls, poured milk, and placed them on the table. The girls ate quietly, too tired to fight. Marcus sipped his coffee and watched them, thinking how ordinary this morning felt, even as everything had changed. Next days passed in a blur of new routines. Marcus took time off work to care for the girls until the adoption could be finalized. Mornings began with cereal and cartoons on TV. Mia liked the bright colors and funny characters, and Zoe would clap with delight at the music. Marcus washed their hair in the tub, gently massaging shampoo and rinsing until their curls shone. They giggled as water splashed over the sides and onto the tile floor. After the bath, Marcus laid out matching pajamas. The sisters ran around his small living room, gleefully chasing each other. He caught Zoe in his arms and spun her so she squealed. He laughed too, the first full laugh he'd had in months. When they tired, he read them a story from a small collection of children's books he borrowed from the library. He tried silly voices and made animal noises. Mia's eyes lit up when he made the lion roar, and Zoe hugged the book tight when the story ended. Afternoons were spent learning simple lessons. Marcus printed numbers and letters on paper and sat at the little table with crayons. Mia traced her name with focus, while Zoe scribbled big loops, her tongue poking out in concentration. Marcus praised their work and taped the pages to the refrigerator door. Look, he said, pointing to their art. Your first gallery? Mia beamed, and Zoe clapped. As the sun set, the local recreation center offered a playgroup. Marcus bundled the girls into their coats and walked them to the bus stop. Neighbors greeted him warmly and admired how well-behaved the children were. At the center, children ran and laughed in a large room with colorful mats and toys. Marcus sat on a bench, sipping tea from a paper cup, while Mia built towers with foam blocks, and Zoe crawled through a tunnel. One afternoon, a woman approached and knelt beside Marcus. You're doing a wonderful job, she said softly. My name is Karen. I work with single fathers in the area. She handed him a business card. If you ever need support or just someone to talk to, feel free to call. Marcus nodded gratefully and slipped the card into his pocket. Evenings brought shared dinners. Marcus learned to cook simple meals: spaghetti with tomato sauce, grilled cheese and tomato soup, scrambled eggs with toast. The girls helped stir ingredients or tear lettuce for salad. Mealtimes were noisy but joyful. As they talked about their day, Mia told stories about the colorful blocks, and Zoe babbled her own version, making everyone laugh. On the 3rd day, Ms. Reed returned with good news. Your home inspection passed, she said, smiling broadly. The court will grant emergency foster care for both girls until final adoption. Congratulations. Marcus's eyes filled with tears. He crouched and hugged Mia. Then Zoe and the girls clung to him tightly. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you so much. With foster status approved, Marcus enrolled Mia in a local preschool and found a daycare for Zoe. The thought of strangers caring for them made his chest ache, but he reminded himself it would be only during his work hours. He hired a part-time nanny, Yolanda, who arrived the next day. Yolanda was warm and gentle. She sang lullabies to Zoe and read picture books with Mia. Marcus watched them play together and felt peace knowing the girls were in kind hands. At work, colleagues noticed a new spark in Marcus, smiled more, laughed at jokes, and spoke about his girls with pride. He brought photos to share, Mia's artwork taped to his office door, and Zoe's first scribbles. His manager praised his dedication and agreed to a flexible schedule so he could attend school events. On Saturday, the family went to the park where it all began. The rain had stopped, leaving the grass fresh and green. Marcus pointed out the bench where he found the sisters. Mia touched the wet wood and closed her eyes, remembering. Zoe toddled around, picking up fallen leaves. A gentle breeze rustled. The branches overhead, they spread a blanket for a picnic. Marcus unpacked juice boxes and sandwiches. Mia chattered about her favorite cartoon, and Zoe babbled, waving a leaf like a flag. After they ate, Marcus taught them to fly a small kite. Mia held the string carefully as Marcus ran, guiding the kite into the sky. Zoe ran beneath it, laughing as the wind pulled the colorful tail. That evening, as the girls slept soundly, Marcus sat in their room, watching their gentle breathing. He thought about the past days, how quickly Bond had grown, he remembered. Feeling lonely and empty, now his home felt full of life, of sounds, of love. He knew the road ahead would hold challenges. Court hearings, legal fees, school conferences, and the worry that one day the girls might question why their mother never returned. But those worries felt smaller now. He leaned down and kissed their foreheads. "Good night," he whispered. "I'm here, and I always will be." He turned off the light and stepped into the hallway, listening to the soft creaks of the floorboards. In that quiet moment, Marcus felt grateful for the twist of fate, how the rain that brought fear and loss on that first night had also washed away his loneliness and brought him the family he never knew he needed. Marcus stood at the edge of the schoolyard, watching Mia and Zoe run toward the classroom door, their little backpacks bouncing on their shoulders. The morning sun felt warm against his face, and he took a deep breath, proud of how far they had. Come, Mia, now 6, held Zoe's hand tightly. Zoe 4 skipped beside her sister, her curls catching the light like tiny halos. As they climbed the steps, Mia turned once and waved. Marcus waved back, then bent to kiss Zoe's forehead. Inside the classroom, Mia found a spot next to the window. She arranged her pencils neatly, humming softly. Zoe settled onto a small chair, clutching the stuffed bear Marcus had given her. When the teacher, Ms. Patel, greeted them, both sisters smiled shyly. Marcus lingered in the doorway until the bell rang, then left with a light heart. At work that day, he remembered the excitement of their first day at preschool. Now, Mia read short sentences, and Zoe learned her numbers. Each small step was a triumph. He glanced at his phone and saw a message from Karen, the woman who ran the single father support group. They would meet that evening at the community center. Marcus thought that might help him learn from others who understood the challenges. He faced when he arrived at the center. A circle of chairs waited under soft lights. Other fathers greeted him warmly. A man named Jorge shared how he juggled work and homework. A father called Thomas spoke about helping his son through reading struggles. Marcus listened and then spoke about his own fears, that Mia and Zoe might feel different because they had no mother. The group listened, offering kind words and stories of how their children had grown strong and confident. Later that week, Zoe came home crying from daycare. She told Marcus some older children had said her hair was weird. Marcus knelt beside her, brushing a wet curl from her eye. "Your hair is beautiful," he said softly. He lifted her onto his lap and told her stories of African queens. With curly hair like hers, Zoe's tears dried as she listened, her large eyes shining with hope. The next day at breakfast, Zoe twirled a curl and said proudly, "I am a queen." Marcus smiled, his heart full. At the art gallery 3 months later, Mia's paintings were displayed on tall easels. The bright colors and bold shapes caught the eye of every visitor. Marcus walked along the rows, pointing out Mia's self-portraiture. Standing tall with Zoe by her side and Marcus behind them, arms raised in joy, a gallery owner approached and asked if she could buy one of Mia's pieces for the city library. Mia blushed, but nodded. Zoe sat on a child-sized chair next to her sister, clapping her hands. Marcus felt tears prick his eyes, proud and amazed, that his daughter's art would welcome families into the library. Back at home that evening, Marcus cooked spaghetti and set extra room at the table for friends. Kieran and her son joined them, and Jorge brought his daughter. Plates clinked and laughter filled the air as the children talked about school and art and bedtime stories. Marcus watched Zoe teach Karen's son to sing the lion song he sang at bedtime. He realized how much his life had grown richer through these friendships. But life did not stay easy. 6 months later, the company where Marcus worked announced layoffs. He listened in stunned silence as his manager explained that the budget cuts meant his position was eliminated. Marcus felt a cold knot in his stomach. How would he pay the bills? How would he keep the girls in daycare? He nodded and thanked. His manager then walked out of the office with a heavy heart. At home that night, he sat at the kitchen table with a stack of bills and a small jar of coins he kept for emergencies. Mia and Zoe bounded in, showing drawings for school. They had no idea what was happening. Marcus hugged them tight and promised they would be all right. He reminded himself of how brave they were and how they had already overcome so much. The next morning, he woke early and went to the living room. He found the girls asleep on the couch, Zoe's head on Mia's lap. He smiled at their peaceful faces and strode to his desk. He opened his laptop and began searching for jobs. Each rejection email felt like a cold wind, but he refused to give up. One afternoon, Mia and Zoe asked if they could help. They set up a small lemonade stand on the sidewalk outside their apartment. With Marcus's help, they squeezed lemons, added sugar, and poured the drink into cups. A handmade sign read, "Lemonade to help Daddy." Passers-by bought cups and left encouraging notes. Mia carefully counted each dollar, placing coins into a jar. Zoe collected flowers and left them on the corner for neighbors to take. By evening, they had raised enough money for 3 days of groceries. Marcus knelt and hugged both of them. "You saved me," he told them, with a voice thick with emotion. Mia and Zoe beamed. Marcus saw in their faces hope and pride that no money in the world could buy. During that time, his support group friends rallied. Karen arranged for him to meet a small business owner who needed help with marketing. Jorge introduced him to a friend who worked at a local school. Soon, Marcus had 2 part-time jobs, one as a library assistant, helping organize books and run children's reading hours. The other helping a small bakery improve its social media. Each role was different, but both kept him busy and connected to the community. One morning, as he walked Mia and Zoe to school, he paused at the bench in the park where he first met them in the rain. He knelt and touched the chipped wood. Mia and Zoe gathered around. "That's where we met him," Mia said, pointing at the bench. Zoe held out her hand and touched the wet spot where Marcus had knelt that first night. Marcus smiled and reached for their hands. "We made our own story here," he said softly. In the years that followed, both girls flourished. Mia, now 8, won a city art contest for her painting of a family under an umbrella in the rain. She dedicated it to "My dad who loves me." In Every Storm, Zoe 6 performed in her first school play and charmed the audience as the baby chick. Marcus sat in the front row, clapping the loudest tears in his eyes. School nights were filled with homework sessions. At the kitchen table, Marcus helped Mia sound out new words and showed her how to form letters. Zoe practiced counting with colorful blocks, stacking them into towers taller than she was. The girls giggled as they knocked the towers down, the blocks spilling across the floor. Marcus joined in, laughing with them until their sides hurt. On weekends, the family hiked nearby trails. Mia ran ahead, collecting wildflowers. Zoe chased butterflies, her laughter echoing through the trees. Marcus walked more slowly, carrying Zoe when she got tired. They picnicked by a small stream, sharing sandwiches and watching minnows dart in the clear water. At night, they stargazed on a blanket, naming constellations and making wishes. Through every step, Marcus remained their anchor. He taught them to be kind to others, to stand up for themselves, and to never let fear hold them back. When Mia hesitated to join a new art class, Marcus reminded her of how brave she had been when she first cried in the rain. When Zoe was nervous about her first sleepover, he promised to pick her up at the very first sign of tears as Marcus tucked them into bed each night. They would whisper stories of their dreams. Mia spoke of painting murals on city walls, while Zoe dreamed of dancing in a big theater. Marcus kissed their foreheads and told them to reach for the stars. "I believe in you," he would say. In these quiet moments, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The lonely man who once sat under a street lamp in the rain was gone. In his place stood a father who had found purpose and joy in the laughter of 2 bright girls. And though the road had twists and turns, They walked it together. Each step, a testament to love's power to heal and transform. Marcus woke early to the soft glow of sunrise filtering through the curtains. He padded quietly down the hall to Mia's room. At 15, she already rose before dawn to paint. He found her standing beside the tall easel in the corner, brushes in hand, as she added final strokes to a canvas of a rainy park bench. The painting showed 3 figures huddled under a bright red umbrella. Marcus recognized the faces: himself, Mia, and little Zoe. "Good morning," he whispered. Mia turned, her eyes shining. "I finished," she said softly. The painting glowed with deep greens of grass and gray skies, but the umbrella glowed like a beacon. Marcus stepped closer, feeling emotion catch in his throat. "It's beautiful," he said. "You really captured us." Mia smiled shyly, then slipped the canvas from the easel. She carried it to the living room, where Zoe waited on the couch, studying a stack of books. "That's amazing," Zoe said. Leaning forward, at 13, Zoe spoke with calm confidence. She loved words, and she planned to argue cases one day as a lawyer. The sisters hung the painting above the fireplace. The bright red umbrella felt like hope itself. That autumn day, Marcus drove Mia to the art academy, where she had auditioned for a special scholarship program. He parked in the lot and held her hand as they walked to the front door. Mia's heart pounded. She had worked for months, perfecting her portfolio. When they reached the registration desk, the woman there greeted them warmly. She led them into a studio filled with easels and clay sculptures. Mia took a deep breath and began sketching. From a still life of fruit, Marcus waited outside, pacing quietly. 2 hours later, Mia emerged, cheeks flushed. She found him on the bench under a maple tree. He stood and wrapped her in a hug. "How did it go?" he asked. Mia nodded, then burst into tears. "They offered me the scholarship," she said. Marcus felt tears in his own eyes. "I'm so proud," he whispered. He lifted her off the bench and spun her around. Over the next weeks, Mia attended classes at the academy 2 afternoons a week. She learned new techniques in watercolor and pastels. Marcus adjusted his work schedule so he could pick her up on the way home. Zoe, meanwhile, spent her time at debate club. At 13, Zoe loved a good argument. She practiced speeches about school issues and current events. Marcus listened at the kitchen table as she delivered her points, offering gentle feedback. One evening, Zoe came home buzzing with news. She had won her first debate tournament. She rushed in, untying her coat and waving a certificate. Marcus embraced her, spinning her in a circle. Zoe's cheeks glowed with pride. Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out a small trophy he had saved from his own high school days. He handed it to Zoe. "You deserve this," he said. Zoe held it carefully and whispered, "Thank you." As the sisters grew, their bond with Marcus deepened. They kept their weekly daddy dates. On Saturdays, they chose an activity together. Sometimes it was visiting the art museum so Mia could study paintings up close. Other times they went to the courthouse for a mock trial day where Zoe practiced her opening statement. Marcus cheered the loudest at her performances and asked thoughtful questions afterward. He watched her confidence grow. Schoolwork became more demanding. Marcus set up a study corner in the living room. He bought a small desk and adjustable lamp. Every evening after dinner, the 3 of them gathered there. Marcus helped Mia prepare for her art exams, quizzing her on color theory and composition. He quizzed Zoe on vocabulary and debate tactics. When they both had tests on the same night, so they supported each other, Mia quizzed Zoe on speech terms, and Zoe helped Mia review art history dates. One winter night, they faced a new challenge. Mia felt overwhelmed by a painting project. In 2 days, and Zoe had a final debate semifinal the next morning, both sisters worried they could not do enough. Marcus gathered them to the couch and held their hands. "You too can do this," he said. "Remember how far you've come?" He told Mia about the first painting she ever tried and how much she had learned since. He reminded Zoe of her first speech, when she trembled at the podium. "You spoke your heart then, and you will again." Encouraged, Mia returned to her. easel and Zoe to her notes. Marcus brewed tea and brought snacks. He checked on them every hour, offering words of support. When midnight came, both sisters yawned but smiled. They finished their work and hugged Marcus tight before going to bed. The next morning, Zoe delivered a winning argument. Mia's painting received high praise from her instructor. By spring, both sisters shone in their fields. Mia's artwork was chosen for display at the City Library's Youth Gallery. She stood beside her painting at the opening, wearing a simple dress, her hair pulled back. Marcus took a place in the front row. When the librarian announced Mia's name, applause filled the room. Mia's cheeks glowed as she walked forward to accept a small ribbon. Marcus beamed with pride. That same month, Zoe led her debate team to the regional finals. At the auditorium, she stood at the podium under bright lights. Her voice was clear and steady as she presented her case on environmental issues. When the judge announced her as the top speaker, the audience cheered. Zoe turned and saw Marcus. In the balcony, waving and clapping, she waved back, tears shining in her eyes. After those successes, the sisters planned something special. Graduation from high school was not far off. They wanted to honor Marcus for all he had done. They met with Ms. Patel, their former teacher, who helped them record messages and gather photos. Mia dug out old snapshots. The first painting Mia made Zoe's first debate certificate, and that photo of them all under the umbrella. They scanned each image and wrote memories beside them. At home, they created a video montage. Mia painted a simple map of the park bench where they met, marking the spot with a red dot. Zoe wrote a letter by hand. "Dear Dad, you saved us and saved yourself too. You taught us to be brave and kind." They read the letter aloud and recorded it. Marcus had no idea they worked on this surprise. The night before graduation, 3 of them sat around the living room floor with snacks and the laptop. They watched the montage together. Childhood laughter in the bathtub, first day at school, art shows, debate tournaments. Zoe's voice read the letter as images flashed. Marcus's eyes filled with tears when the final slide read, "We love you, Dad." His chest tightened. Mia and Zoe hugged him as he whispered, "Thank you both. This is the best gift." Graduation day arrived, bright and warm. Marcus wore his best suit, his tie a deep red. He sat between Mia and Zoe in a row of chairs on the school lawn. Caps and gowns rustled around them. Ceremony began with speeches about new journeys. When the principal called the sisters' names, they walked across the stage and clapped louder than anyone. He watched Mia accept her diploma, then Zoe. Afterward, family and friends gathered for photos. Sisters led Marcus away toward the bench in the park. They positioned him under a decorated arch of balloons. In front of neighbors and friends, they presented him with a framed plaque. It read, "To Marcus Johnson, our father, our hero, with love from Mia and Zoe." A small crowd cheered as Marcus took the plaque, his voice shaky. "I love you both," he said. "You make every day brighter." That evening, they celebrated at home with homemade cake and ice cream. They toasted 2 new beginnings. College art classes for Mia, debate camp for Zoe. Marcus promised to support every dream. They danced in the living room, Mia leading with graceful steps and Zoe spinning in laughter. Marcus joined in, feeling lighter than he had ever felt. Before bed, the sisters tucked the new plaque beside the umbrella painting over the fireplace. Marcus kissed each forehead and whispered, "You are my greatest pride." As he turned off the light, he walked past the painting and paused. The red umbrella seemed to glow, reminding him of that rainy night so long ago. He closed his eyes and smiled. In their journey from cold rain to bright sunlight, they had become a true family, bound not by blood, but by love, trust, and unwavering faith in each other. Marcus woke before dawn, his heart fluttering with excitement. Today was the day. He dressed carefully in a crisp shirt and trousers, smoothing his collar in the mirror. When he stepped into the living room, he saw Mia and Zoe already up, sitting on the couch in matching dresses. Their faces glowed as they watched him enter. "Ready, Dad?" Mia asked softly, her eyes bright. Zoe nodded, clutching her hand. They held small bouquets of wildflowers they had picked early that morning. Marcus smiled, feeling proud and a little nervous. He gathered them in a quick hug. "Let's go," he said. They drove to the city park, where a small stage had been set up beside the old bench. The area was decorated with white ribbons and lanterns that glowed softly even in the morning light. Marcus recognized the bench immediately. It was freshly painted and polished. A small plaque was fixed to its backrest, "Where Love Found Us." Neighbors, friends, and family gathered on folding chairs facing the stage. Marcus saw Ms., Reed, Karen, Jorge, and many others who had helped them over the years. He waved to them, his heart warm with gratitude. The sisters led him to a spot on the stage. Mia's paintings and Zoe's debate ribbons lined the edges in neat frames, like a gallery. When the ceremony began, Mia stepped forward. She held a piece of paper, trembling slightly. She cleared her throat and spoke in a clear voice. 15 years ago, my sister and I sat here, scared and alone in the rain, she said, her eyes on Marcus. A kind man gave us shelter and love. He never turned us away, even when he had nothing. She paused, and tears shone in her eyes. He became our father. As she spoke, Zoe passed out small printouts of a video montage they had made. Marcus took one and opened it on his phone. He watched scenes of their life, the first night in the car, the girls' laughter in the bathtub, Mia's painting it, the library Zoe's debate wins, Thanksgiving dinners, kite flying in the park. Each clip ended with the sisters hugging Marcus, their words echoing, "Thank you, Dad." When the video ended, Zoe stepped forward. Her voice was steady and full of emotion. "You taught us to be brave, to be kind, and to never give up," she said. She handed Marcus a folded letter. He unfolded it with trembling hands and read aloud, "Dear Dad, you are our hero. You found us in the rain and gave us a family. We love you more than words can say. Love, Mia and Zoe." Marcus's voice broke as he read, and tears ran down his cheeks. He looked up to see everyone standing and clapping. Applause rolled across the park like gentle waves. Marcus rose and stepped to the edge of the stage. He held the letter close to his heart. "I don't have words to thank you all," he began, his voice wavering. 15 years ago I felt empty. Then 2 little girls changed my life. They brought laughter, hope, and love into my home. I promise to always be there for them, just as they've been there for me. Dada." He looked at Mia and Zoe, who stood with shining eyes. "You two are my greatest gift." He knelt and hugged them, and the crowd cheered again. Journalists from the local paper snapped photos, capturing the moment of reunion under the gentle morning sun. A few people wiped their own tears. It felt as though the rain had returned, not from clouds above, but from the warmth of shared hearts. After the ceremony, neighbors gathered around the bench, taking turns to sit and pose for photos. Children played nearby, pretending to be like Mia and Zoe as they told stories about the rain bench. Marcus stood aside, watching with a smile. He saw Karen chatting with Zoe about future debate trips, and Jorge patting Mia's back as they talked about her next gallery showing. A park official approached Marcus, holding a small wooden box. "We wanted to give you something to remember today," he said. Inside was a vial of rainwater collected from the very puddles where Mia and Zoe had first sat.
Ow.
The official explained it was sealed in a glass globe, a symbol of beginnings and resilience. In his eyes, as the sun climbed higher, the crowd began to disperse. Families picnicked on the grass, and Marcus invited everyone to stay for a simple lunch of sandwiches and lemonade. Mia and Zoe helped serve plates, laughing as they passed bowls of fruit salad. Marcus found himself surrounded by people who had supported them, social workers, teachers, friends, even neighbors who had once only waved from their windows. Later, when the park quieted, Marcus took Mia and Zoe by the hand and led them back to the bench. They sat together, shoulders touching. Zoe placed her hand on top of Mia's, and Mia placed hers on Marcus's knee. The wildflowers, the girls, carried lay in their laps. "This is our special place," Marcus said softly. He remembered every detail of that first night. The sound of rain, the fear in their eyes, the warmth of their bodies against his coat. Now it felt peaceful and full of promise. Mia leaned her head on his shoulder. "Thank you for everything," she whispered. rested her head on his other side. "We love you, Dad," she said. He closed his eyes and breathed in deeply, smelling the fresh grass and flowers. "I love you both," he replied. They sat in comfortable silence, watching clouds drift across the blue sky. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves overhead. Marcus thought of all the years ahead. College graduations, weddings, perhaps grandchildren. He felt ready for every moment, because they would face it together. As the afternoon light softened, the sisters stood and held Marcus's hands. "Oh, let's go home," Mia said with a smile. "Oh," Zoe nodded, her curls bouncing. They walked away from the bench, each step echoing their journey, from frightened children in the rain to confident young women honoring the man who saved them. Marcus watched them go, his heart full. He turned back to the bench one last time and touched the plaque. In that simple act, he honored the life they had built together. The rain might fall again someday, but they would face it side by side, knowing love was their greatest shelter. Together, they walked toward the horizon, the bench standing as a symbol of hope and the power of one caring heart to change 3 lives forever.